ver si está allá. Vamos a ver si está allá.
Sorry, I was muted. Hello, welcome to Optional Rule. My name is Scott. I am the host of this weekly D&D discussion show. I talk about game design, anything related to D&D or tabletop games at all, running your games, things you might be able to use in your own games, and by way of showing you how I develop things for my games, what I'm weighing, the sacrifices and the trade-offs I make. Everything is about trade-offs. You only have a limited amount of time in any individual game, and I'm no different. So I thought I'd offer some of my experience in the last 40 years of running games, D&D and all kinds of different games, and how that affects my campaign. So welcome to the stream. If you're new here especially, thank you very much for joining me. If you're returning, it's great to see you again. I hope you'll go ahead and say hello down in the chat. Go ahead and leave a comment, like, subscribe, do all those social media things. Again, this is a small channel. We're growing over time. I've had some great experiences engaging with people in the community. I hope you'll be part of that experience. I hope you'll offer some of your thoughts, some of your questions down in the chat. I'm happy to read those on air. I'm happy to, if you don't want your name called out, please let me know. But I'm happy to field those questions here, talk about really any aspect of D&D that is of interest to you. But I'm going to be working through some of my campaign stuff unless I get a question. So we'll just jump into that today. You're seeing a little bit about the adventure that I'm just about to go on. Hey, Bread Bowl Shoes, it's great to have you here. It's great to have you here. I'm glad you got a chance to watch the stream. It's great to have you here as well. Go ahead and ask any questions you have, anything related to gaming or D&D. I'm prepping for for my Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign. I'll talk a little bit about that. Let me increase the font here so this is a little easier to read. I'm going to set up the situation where we are. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I posted this week in terms of some skill challenges. I have a blog you may or may not have seen. It's on optionalrule.com. I got quite a bit of reaction to this week, so I'll talk about this, and it's relevant to the adventure I'm trying to create this week because I'm trying to break the mold of fighting. We've had a couple of sessions now where it was intense fights. We had a great role-playing session last time, but I really want to mix things up and make the world a little bit more rich. So I'm always looking for opportunities to do that. I wrote a post that got a lot of reaction called Skill Challenges in 5e last week. I hope you'll check it out. Got a lot of great feedback around that, but the devil's in the details when you throw out something like skill challenges or make your game more rich or add more to your setting or add more to an encounter. That's a great thing to say in a sweeping term, but how do you make that relevant in an individual session? That's what we're going to talk about today, because I have to find some way to translate that to my players in a way that they would find interesting. There's many stages, many fail states as in preparing games or as a game master. One of those is you prepare things that are interesting to you and only you. At its root, you always want to produce things that are interesting to you. You have to stay engaged as a GM. But if it's only interesting to you, how useful is that? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and go through that design. All right. So let's talk about where we are. So I am playing I'm running a campaign called Rime of the Frostmaiden. It happens in Icewind Dale, this region locked in a 2-year darkness, magically induced darkness, and in the grip of a winter. So it's very bitter cold, 20 degrees. We've gone through what I call the first 2 chapters of the adventure. It's really the first chapter of the module, but I try to bound my own stories to this, and I do it's about a 50-50 this campaign. It's about 50% of the content is coming directly from the module, and another 50% is what I'm developing. And this session is going to be very apparent of that, because what I have is the players have been focused on this center area of the map, an area called the 10 Towns, where and this is a little player icon I use for the overland map. The players are actually over here. So they've focused on the political intrigue, the supply, the survival of the people of these 10 towns. And these had 2 chapters where the first chapter was around a very personal sense of horror, where there was a crew out murdering people who, on behalf of this goddess who's caused the great winter, and the players stopped them. That was the getting intro to the 10 towns, getting intro to the storyline, and stopping this sort of personal, individualized threat that was happening to the people of the 10 towns. Chapter 2 was them getting involved in the intrigue, the basically the logistics and politics of the 10 towns themselves. It was unraveling a plot that was attempting to take over the political structure of the 10 towns and unraveling a plot to subvert the supply lines for the 10 towns. So the players came to that climax. They've secured supplies for the 10 towns. They've made people a little bit safer to give them some breathing room. And we had a number of payoffs. So let me start out with that. Payoffs for campaigns. Building those payoff elements throughout your campaign is highly important, not just at a personal level, but to understand how players affect the world. This session, the players arrived in what was called Lonelywood, which is this town sort of right here. I'll zoom in on the map here. It's at the edge of a town. We had set up this scenario where all of the towns were starving. They were having difficulty getting supplies because of this long winter in. Over the chapter 1 and 2 that I called it, again, it's chapter 1 in the book. One of the things the players did was work with their patron over here in Mammoth Falls, a setting that I created. It has all this complex of underground lakes where they're able to grow these fish and rapidly produce them with this magic item the party recovered and basically stock the lake, this Mare Dwalden. They're able to stock the lake with this fish called knucklehead trout to feed the people of the 10 towns. So by the time players got here, it's one of the players' characters' hometowns. They had this reintroduction to their family and their friends, and they ask them, well, how's it going? And they were able to relate in this third person way that the player characters didn't have to brag about themselves. The world could brag about them. So they would talk about this. Well, it was very difficult for us these past few months, but I don't know what happened, but suddenly the fish started coming back in Lake Dwalden and Mare Dwalden. So we were able to catch fish again, and people are starting to feel a little bit better. It was a bright moment in our lives, they expressed. And the players didn't say it. They didn't take any credit for that. They just sat back and smiled. And that was a great moment. They can see the impact of something they did 4 or 5 sessions ago happening on the people that they're meeting directly. And in this case, one of the player characters' family members, which was a really powerful moment. So where are we in the adventure? So the players are entering an encounter called the Black Cabin. By the way, spoilers for Rime and the Frostmaiden here. Although I said like about 50% of the content is going to be me creating it. Still, at the end of the day, I'm basing it on Rime and the Frostmaiden. So there'll be some spoilers. I'm going to talk about what the base of the module is, what holes I need to patch, how I'm doing that, and then how do I enrich that story. So long story short is the adventure the characters are on is there's a gnome artificer that has disappeared, that was up experimenting with something related to the arcane that might uncover more information about this long winter that they're in. And the gnome has disappeared, and the players were asked to go find them. At the same time, they know that they're on the edge of this territory for a Verbig. It's a giant race that a warlord has suddenly appeared from in that area and sort of claimed stake and been hunting people that have come there. And they have this magic hammer that it hooks the players in 2 ways. One, I actually try to create very customized magic items for the players in my game. I have a player who has not yet had a magic item. They use a warhammer. They are a barbarian. They really love it. So I tried to be creative, but I just couldn't. I thought, let's just create Thor's hammer basically for them. So this Verbig supposedly has a hammer of lightning that is able that has magic in some way. So the characters are drawn there for that, and they want to go check out this gnome. So that's really where I'm at. I want to create an adventure that has a couple staged areas. One will be a battle with this Verbig warlord, and that will have to I don't want to create just another stand-up combat, go to a field, fight this character. I want to create some excitement about that, and that's one of the things I want to think through here. So if you have any suggestions for how to create a wintry gorge environmental encounter that involves sort of a warlord, I'm kind of thinking Craster from Game of Thrones. It's got that feel to it, except I'm not going to have that weird wives thing to it. That's just too creepy. I don't want to throw that in. But I might have hirelings or something like that. But anyway, I have to think through that, and I have to get to the cabin itself. I like this black cabin encounter from Rime and the Frostmaiden, but I will say it's got some gaps, and it's a flaw that is common in in Rime and the Frostmaiden that you have to think through as a game master. It builds dependencies on what the players have to have with them to be able to survive this encounter. And it also makes it difficult to rate what level the encounter should go for. If you follow me on Twitter, I posted earlier a list of all the Rime and the Frostmaiden Chapter 2 adventures and my best guess for what levels they fall at. I'd love your feedback on that. It gets a little harder once you're above level. You do level 4, 5, and 6 in this Chapter 2 of Rime and the Frostmaiden. Again, it's Chapter 3 in my own campaign, but it gets a little harder because there's a lot of fudge room in there, right? Things go all over the map. When you look at this encounter, there's really not much here that you enter in this vanilla adventure. There's not much here that there's no combat. It's mostly a sort of an environmental or a thematic encounter. They go to this mysterious cabin. They find a charred body. They find a magic item. If they might mess around with it a little bit, in which case they might trigger the item and it does a ton of damage, probably killing them. And but their spirit hangs around, and then they have to have this ghost adventure where they try to figure it out. The gaps are that it assumes some player characters stay alive and some don't. That's a big assumption. That might not happen. The other thing is these walkways you hear, this cabin is raised above a gorge, and they're trapped. If the player character falls and fails their save, they take like 50 points of damage, and they're only 4th level. Not a lot of characters. I think only one character in the party has over 50 hit points. So everybody would be driven to 0 hit points immediately. And there's 2 characters that's enough damage to kill them outright. So that's a theme that happens over and over and over again in Rime and the Frostmaiden. So again, one of the things you always want to keep in mind is what's the maximum burst damage? Can that kill somebody outright? That's probably not what you want out of your module. So I'll scale the damage down just a little bit, put them at 0 hit points and go. But that's not the core of what I'm concerned about. The solution to all of this, so you find this, let me see if I can find it. So you find what the players do is they find this cabin, they uncover some mysteries of some journals, but there's nothing to fight here. It's not a combat encounter, which is fine with me. But they find this magic item right here. It's a sort of a black coal. It's got some concentric rings about it. It looks a bit like a gyroscope. It bursts magic out and burns the characters away. What it can do, if it's fixed, is cast control weather. Now that's kind of cool because it overturns it. What I want out of this is to set the stage that the great long winter from Oriel, the goddess who's causing this, can be undone. That's the narrative service that this does to the module itself. It's the first bit to tell the players, you can actually unravel this. This is something that can be managed. If you look at my campaign prep format, by the way, I use Return to Lazy Dungeon Master as the format, and I add in, as I do with everything, elements of my own. Like one of the areas I add are themes, what themes I'm looking for, which includes what do I want out of this session. There's 2 things I want out of this session. I want to get Store, which is the character I'm talking about before, a good weapon, and I want to set the stage that the Great Winter can be undone. That's what I want. So as a result, what I need out of that is to add some hints in journals that Oriel is using some kind of magic item. One of the things about creating adventures that involve gods is it removes a lot of agency, or at least it makes the players question, well, what can I do about this? It's a god. What you have to establish when you're fighting some kind of power like that. Because gods, by their nature, they're unkillable. They're beyond the scope of the player characters. So you have to start to, there's a couple premises that I need to feed the players over this next chapter. One, that this is a magic MacGuffin. It's an artifact that can be countered or undone. 2, that it is taking its toll on the goddess that exposes her to a vulnerable to some kind of vulnerability that the players actually can feel like they can go do something about. And then 3, this is a separate thing, but I have this subplot of the Arcane Brotherhood that I want to set the stage that they want to stop the Arcane Brotherhood from getting a hold of this as well. The Arcane Brotherhood is out there actually trying to stop this themselves, but it's because they want to get the power for themselves to be able to do it too. That's not a solution. So the players need to oppose the Arcane Brotherhood and undo what Oriel is doing. All this Arcane Brotherhood stuff is stuff I added. If you're running the module, by the way, I've cut that Netherese city at the end of it because what's the point of that? Like the climax of the module should be, if the climax of the module is not a fight with a goddess, I don't know what it is. And that the module is designed to have this whole additional chapter or two after the fight with the goddess. I'm not going to do that. One of the other things I do is I add a strong start. That's in the modules, right? So they're going to start in the woods with a hunting scene. So they've gone into the Lonely Woods. And that's what I'll show you right when I went to this map here. They're going to go a few miles across this woods, getting towards the gorge, and I want them to hit a scene, kind of like if you remember the old Planet of the Apes from the 70s, when the protagonist reaches the end reaches the edge of the sort of no man's land or the wasteland, whatever it is. They see these sort of effigies and they see these icons, and there's just something that tells them past this point lies danger. Here there be dragons, right? It's a narrative technique used. So I need something. And by the way, if you have a suggestion of what that could be, go ahead and drop it in the chat. But I need something that the players will run across, kind of like the White Walkers. That moment from the Game of Thrones, where if you remember the very first season, very beginning, they set up the White Walkers by having something terrible happen in the woods, and the first character that you see comes into the middle of this clearing with this these victims' body parts just arranged in this sort of spiral. This maybe I'm giving myself the answer here. They're set in this spiral. That's what I should do. I think that's what I'm going to do. So the big opening is going to be they're in the Lonely Woods. The Lonely Wood. They're tracking across lots and lots of miles of woods. I'm going to say that they last mile animals have become sparse. Animals have become scarce. They run across artwork made from the bones of previous victims of the hunt. So I want just got to talk it out sometime. Bread Ball Shoes was saying, yeah, exactly. This is actually, so let me tell you why I do this. Why am I doing this stream at all? One, I love to talk to other gamers. So I just want to talk to other gamers. We're in pandemic time, so I'm shut in my house and I just need to talk to people. But besides that, there's this technique in software engineering called the rubber ducky, where when you have a problem you can't figure out, you literally take a rubber ducky, sit it on your shelf, and you explain to that rubber ducky what it is you need to do. And that process of just verbalizing it uncovers the solution for you. And that's some of what I'm doing here. And I'm letting you see the process as it happens, because I hope you'll run a game and I hope this demystifies it a little bit. Again, let me quickly cover, I do this most sessions, but for anybody who's new here, this is a Return to Lazy Dungeon Master technique for session notes. I have a separate fronts thing I use for longer plots, but it basically lists out the players what they need to do. I list a section I add about what themes I want to make sure, because I'm always tying back to, in this module, it's isolation, secrets, paranoia, horror, that kind of stuff. So I think I've hit that with what I just said. I list a section for what do I want out of this session. Then I list a section for what plot threads do I have, one of my weaknesses as a DM, and I suggest you do this too. If you have a weakness, I overcomplicate plots. I have multiple intricate five different plots going on as well. I really try as hard as I can not to do more than 3, but I end up doing more than I need to. And if I can do 2, even better. So I'm down to that. So I list out the plot threads and what's going on. Strong Start is from Return to Lazy Dungeon Master. So start the session with a bang as a way to draw the players into the session itself, so they're not taking an hour to discuss sort of what happened last session and what did they have, and just be out there. I've added this as what's the verb of this session? What do I want to get out of it? I don't know if it's a great verb, but hunt is what I put down. I think of a verb that's an action verb that either something done to them or something they can do. Investigate's not really a verb, although it technically is. Usually it's like uncover secrets or something like that. Potential scenes, I list those out. Secrets and information, these are just things that players could discover along the way. An important element of this is don't list out how they discover it. Just list out what's this quickly, what the situation is, and what is the secret. So, and then look for opportunities during the session to reveal that information. I list an area of, there's important NPCs. This ends up being a mnemonic device for me to remember the NPCs in here. And then what fantastic locations do you have in mind? So anyway, that's the technique I use. This helps me session to session. We're on session 16. I just make a copy of this. I'm using Notion SO to bring it forward. So back to this. What do I want out of strong start? They run across an artwork installation made from the bones of previous victims of the hunt. I like that they'll have to figure out what description this is, but it'll be very very Game of Thronesy. And it'll have to be like trophy hunting. Like, so I want it to be a mix of between Game of Thrones and Predator, where you go in and you see these trophies, the Predator. So trophies of a hunt, we'll say that they're staged in a way that tells the story of the person. So weapons next to them, we'll say broken, many of them. Some sort of fetish, so some sort of giantish ruin, fetish or ruin carved into the bones, that if anyone speaks, tells the story of how they were hunted. Almost respectfully. So it's this kind of weird hunter thing where I respect this thing I killed, but not enough not to kill it. So that'll set up what the stage, so the players know I'm entering into a danger zone. So how do I want this whole thing to unfold gets to be an interesting element. So this hunt, this storyline of the hunt and so forth, that's all added by me. The reason why I want to add it, let's go why am I bothering to do this in the first place? Especially when I was torn, I actually like this module. The story, this encounter, as it's written in the module, you go to this cabin, you find the gnome has disappeared, there's just charred remains of the person. You find this magic item, it bursts in this magical field, probably kills some players that turn them into spirits that linger around this cabin. You discover the gnome's spirit, the artificer, is still hanging around the cabin. And you basically have to uncover you do some investigation to uncover what needs to be done to this item to make it safe to operate, because it can cast control weather. So what are the gaps? The gaps are, one, it assumes the players have the knowledge to do this investigation in the first place. Now they do. They have one character with them that's a wizard that might be able to untie that. Two, the solution to this is that you have to forge another ring, and so there's already 2 rings here. You realize if you do a third, you can actually contain the power of the magic item, but it assumes the characters have a smithing kit with them and they have proficiency in them. And what do you do if you don't? And it also assumes that some character has physically survived this bursting of the magic item to be able to do that in the first place. Because if they all die, they're all spirits hanging around. Now the encounter does have a MacGuffin in here. It says if they all die, this werebear shows up and the players can kind of do a ghost thing where they write instructions in a window. But I mean, it's just, there's too many things that can go wrong. It depends on a very specific implementation of the party. It depends on a very specific implementation of the specific set of skills that the players have and equipment. So I'm resorting to adding more to this to set this up in the way a video game does it. One of the things in video games is if you're playing across a video game, you're in some location and you find a weird item, you usually know, oh, this must be a quest item because this has no reason to be here. So what am I doing? So I'm trying to avoid it being that obvious, but I want to pepper in more that creates this as a dynamic location and does a few of the other things I need. So one, I need somebody who can smith that ring. I need somebody with some clue as to what is happening with this magic item or what happened at the cabin, because if the players can't roll and figure it out, they're dead in the water, and then I just have to metagame and tell them. So I'm trying to create these sort of other backdoor ways into this knowledge without making it seem arbitrary. So that gets back to a point I've made in made about how to design mysteries and investigation scenarios. The players, you should never gate mystery content. You should never gate content necessary to move the story forward behind a role or an assumption. You should never gate it. It should always just, if the players go to a location or do anything, they find the minimal information needed to move the story to the different stages to move it forward. It should just be a given. I think it's a mistaken design. It's a design flaw of modules to gate it behind an assumed behavior, an assumed item, an assumed ethic on the player's part, an assumed skill roll, whatever. You should just have the core information. Now, so how do you build mysteries in an RPG context? You should have value add information that's discovered about the nature of the danger that you're facing, about the context of the ethics behind it, about who it may or may not affect within the environment. Those are all fair game for the adventure. So what I need to do is have multiple pathways to discover this information. One, the players can find out all of this about the stone and so forth by looking in journals. What is the minimum information that they need to find out? That's a good question. Let me actually list that out. So potential scenes. Talk about the black cabin. The black cabin. Minimum information. The gnome was killed by a device. So I'm going to put that in by journal. I'm going to say the journal. I need the minimum information. The gnome was killed by the device itself. So I need them to know that the gnome wasn't sure this thing can work. So I'm going to say the journal says the item isn't ready. And they're worried it will malfunction. Now, that should be enough information with that in the journal and looking at the charred body of the gnome. That should be enough information that something went wrong. They also need to know that this can create a pocket of good weather. So they don't need to know what it can do, but they need to know this should undo Oriel's magic in a pocket area. So that's all in the journal. Do I need to add something about the fix in here? I don't think I need to. I need another information is the gnome had help. Had help by Turlin. That's not in the module. From a dwarf smith. That'll do it. So they need that. So I'll just say they had help of a dwarf smith. So their work is very vital to this, is what they'll say. Work very vital. What that does is tell the players that there's something that needs to be created or added that requires a smith, but they don't know what. That's the value add information later. They're going to have to rescue the smith because I want to create a scenario where they have to go out and rescue this smith. So what's happening with this smith? Oh, again, this is all added. What I'm saying is that the smith and the gnome were here trying to work on this magic item. At some point, the magic item malfunctioned, killed the gnome. The dwarf tried to escape the cabin and get back to civilization because they don't know that the gnome can be brought back to life. That's one of the elements of the cabin, by the way. And in the process of trying to escape, they were captured by this Veerberg, this Onas, this war chieftain. Onas realized that they were a smith, imprisoned them in their lodge, and began to make them make magic items. And one of the magic items, it restored a magic hammer, which is what the people are after. And then, so the players, that's why the players have heard about the rise of this problematic Veerberg who's been hunting people in the area. Now they have this hammer and they're moving it along. So that wanting the hammer is going to incentivize the players to go after the Veerberg because they may try to avoid them. And the other thing that will incentivize it, if they go to the cabin, realize that there was a dwarf there, information I need them to be able to tie that to the fact that the Veerberg has something. I'll figure that out in a second, but I need some clue that tells the players that the Veerberg has captured this dwarf. Not a clue. I need a direct statement because I need them to go after them. One of the reasons why I'm including this dwarf as well. None of the players have smith tools. None of the players are smiths. They can't make this additional weapon or this additional ring that'll fix the item. So they need to recover this dwarf to be able to fix the item. Now maybe they won't do that. Maybe it comes apart, and it's okay. You can let a player fail an adventure. So when I said before, you need to create a critical path of information they need to unwind what's going on. That doesn't mean they need to be able to succeed. It means they need to be able to know how to succeed. The rest is up to them. So if they know that there's a dwarven smith down at the Giant's Lodge, and they know they need to rescue them alive, that's enough. The fact that they do rescue them alive or they turn away from it, decide not to do it, that's all on the players. And that's all an outcome of their actions and a consequence of their choices. But the fact that they need to do that is something you want to establish early on. So, so I need some maps. I need something to do interesting about this. So the Black Cabin itself is role playing. I like that. It's a little bit of a mystery. I'm de-emphasizing that by providing some additional answers, but I don't mind because the way that it's originally crafted, the players don't have a lot of agency. They either have the smith tools or they don't. They either are killed by this magic item or they aren't. There's not a lot of ideas. It's mostly the DM relating, okay, now you do this information. And I'm not a big fan of those types of adventures. You want players to have some sort of either tactical agency, strategic agency, role-playing agency, choices on ethics. You want to give them a higher level of agency. So this is my attempt to do that. So let me do a check on myself here. What am I adding here? I'm adding their ability to look at this item, realize it needs to be repaired. They don't have a ton of choices here. They can either choose to study it themselves, bring it back to Dohas. They have this patron who's an artificer. That's actually a viable path for them. If they choose to do that, I think we can do something with that. They'll get chased by the giant as a hunt. They'll be hunted by the giant if they choose to escape. So then the scenario becomes an escape scenario. If they choose to stay and fix it, the scenario becomes a rescue scenario where they need to kill this giant, take his magical stuff, which I know they want, and then rescue this dwarf. So I like that. There's a little bit of a branching structure in here, and maybe the players will throw something out at me. I need to include in these notes. So here's secrets and information. So what do I have here? Onas Cold Iron has a lodge in the gorge. He considers himself a Jarl. The other Veerbarg, I haven't decided if there are other Veerbarg there, Verbig. But the other Verbig only accept him because of his hunting prowess. And, so this hammer. I need to establish something about the hammer. So the hammer Onas is reforged from an old Verbig hero. I keep saying that it was reforged by the dwarf. So that's it. This will be a Verbig artifact that this person established himself as a Jarl. Now, by the way, I have a hard time with that name. Verbig, for you D&D aficionados, Verbig was the term was created by Gary Gygax, and at least as I understand it, and if you have a different story, put it down in the comments, but it sounds like a legendary term, but as far as I know, it's a play on words. Verbig just means very big, and that's what Gary Gygax used for this monster name. It's a race of giants. The kind of Paul Bunyan, I think that was based on this, and that's where it came from. So I have a hard time not laughing every time I say it. By the way, world's okayest Dungeon Master mug today, because it's true. All right, so Onas captured this dwarf. I don't know. They beg for their life. Hey, I can serve you, as they were going to boil him or something. And they said, okay, we'll go into that room, fix this hammer for me, and I'll let you live. So they did that, and now they've got him making more items for them. So that's what happened. And then that's why he became a sudden problem in the region. Now, what do I want out of this? So this is a good, and if you have feedback on this, please put it down in the chat. But what I'm faced with next is what kind of combat encounters do I have? What I imagine is, I want to turn this something cool. I imagine Occam's razor of D&D names. That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. What I imagine is the players are hunted. So they have, if you give me a hunter, they would have something like dogs with them. They have a horn that they blow. So the couple of things I'm considering is the players hear this and they want to run. But I hate that assumption in the case of DMs because players don't run. You run from players. Players don't run from you, generally speaking. So if I build a scenario that's dependent on that, that'll be a little difficult. So, but imagery wise, I like the idea of this sled being pulled by some creatures, maybe dire wolves that are like pull this giant sized sled with this giant on it blowing a battle horn with this sort of hammer that they can throw like Thor's hammer that does distance thing. What I want to do is provide a hard fight. Not incredibly hard, but a hard fight that has several different elements. So what I'm thinking about is just having hunting dogs, dire wolves, right? They're CR3 creatures. I could put other kinds of wolves, but by this point, the party's level 4, and regular wolves really aren't going to do a whole lot for them. So I'm imagining like hunting dogs in the Verbig itself. One of the challenges of a single bad guy like this, I have said before, I don't like encounter designs like that, but D&D is prone to it. What's my alternative? Have a pack of Verberg? That doesn't do a whole lot for them. So this hunter with their dogs come at them. The dire wolves being the dogs pulling the sled. The horn might do something like cause fear. But here's another thing that I feel cornered by as a DM. I hate fear. I hate compelled behavior on the part of players. I don't like fear. I don't like anything that makes them run. So vicious mockery, I think that's the one of it. No, not vicious mockery. Dissonant whispers, that's it. I hate anything that forces a player to do something or makes them lose their turn because there's nothing more boring than, okay, well, thanks for coming. Go ahead and sit there. There's nothing more boring than that. But I don't know. I know what I can do. So what the horn could do is it could do something like cast Bane. Or it could give players disadvantage or something like that. I think, in lack of a better idea, I'm going to say that that Onos also has a magical horn that casts Bane on prey. How do they know prey? I don't know. I don't want this to be a magic item that falls into the hands of the players. So say it's a verbig item only. For the Jarl. That they're able to blow and the players feel shaken and they'll know they've got Bane cast on them. So they can choose if they want to try to run or do something like that or face them off. And they'll hear the wolves barking in the distance, coming at them. The question is, what's the stakes? How do I let them decide to approach the scenario? I don't want to just say you're found no matter what happens. I want to set the stakes for the players. So the opening scenario where they run across this hunting trophy area, I'll let them do. I mean, again, don't gate mystery stuff. So the information I'll give them is that they have these appear to be hunting trophies. These appear to be giantish ruins, and they're arranged in some sort of macabre art. And I'll just leave them at that, and so they know they're entering into some sort of hunting area. So they can do things like survival, to determine how these people died. I'll tell them if they do a good survival check or a medicine check, I'll be able to say, well, they seem to have some gnaw marks from teeth. So that'll let them know that maybe something like a giant wolf or something like that to let them know there's dire wolves there. So that's that value add information. I might do something like crushing injuries to let them know that there was a hammer involved. I might if they do detect magic. So actually, let me do this. So let me write that down. So hunting trophies. So killed by gnawing. blunt weapons. And if they cast detect magic or something like that, anything like that. I have a paladin with them. They detect like a curse of some kind. Now, I don't want to make it demonic because I just did a demonic adventure. We'll say it's Fey based enchantment. That basically this is about the Winter Court cursing the people that the giant is hunting. So that'll all come out from probably medicine, survival, the blunt weapons thing again, maybe medicine. History would let them know something about the so yeah, history skill can be used to determine the cultural significance of these trophies. What would that be? I love to set up a villain that has some vulnerability. So what's the cultural significance? I want to set the stage where I don't want the players fighting every Verbig in the entire world. I don't want to set the stage that they have to fight every Verbig. It would be kind of cool if they realize they can challenge this Jarl to single combat and fight it out. Yeah, I like that. So, but that would have to be something, a value add. That's value add. That's not something you want to give right away. So, understand cultural Verbig tradition that single combat can strip someone of power and let them and give the players rite of passage. So there's a couple of things the players could do with that. They'll be hunted, but what if they choose to stay where they are and they'll say, I'm going to fight you one-on-one. Now, I have to be careful with this because the character that's after this hammer is likely to be the one to challenge him to single combat. I think it's pretty good. So I probably do want to include other Verbig as part of the lodge. They're just not going to get. That's one of the other things. So I don't want the players to feel like I can't fight 27 Verbig. So I want to get them like another history check, or it could be reading Giantish or questioning somebody, but they need to understand that hunts are one-on-one. Hunts are one-on-one affairs. And other Verbig are not allowed to participate. Not a threat, i.e. not a threat. Again, that's value-add information that comes from culturally understanding what these Verbig do. I'm half tempted and regretting I didn't make this Goliath, but that's fine because that's more of a Goliath tradition. But that's fine with me. So yeah, so I like that hunt. So what I'm setting up with this hunt, the players will enter a region, they'll discover these trophies, they'll know right away the information they need from that is I have another idea I'll get to in a second. The information they need from that is I'm in an area that is claimed by the Verbig. I'm in an area where they seem to be hunting sentient species. So this is a dangerous area. And then really that's all they need out of it. They're alive and active, and they'll know that. And then they have a bunch of value add information, that understanding that these hunts are one-on-one, that there'll be a hunter after them and no other Verbig can attack them. The other information that I would is that that if they beat this Verbig, the hunter, in one-on-one combat, they're basically free. They'll get some sort of token where they're free to travel these lands unharmed, which will be a nice incentive. The other thing I want to get across that I just said, I want to get across that there's a dwarf captured. So the idea I just had, when they come to this trophy region that they discover, I want to put in something there and I'm just debating on this, is this value add or not? Anyway, I want to put something there that tells them there's a captured prisoner. So what are the trophies that the Verbig can take? They can take either a life and put their bones out there, or there's some other effigy of a prize. I've captured somebody, like a prisoner. And I hate to. I'm skating on thin ice here because I don't want to have this idea of slavery in my world. I don't like that. But a captured prisoner is not a slave. So they will. There will be a single. Oh, I'll put their hair. I was going to say, what was the token be? There will be a single trophy that isn't bones and is only, what will I say? A few, so hair is one thing. So they'll cut off this person's hair. Oh, that's hard because it's a woman. I made it a woman. I hate to do that. I don't know why, but it just seems like that's not something you want to do to a woman. That's something to a woman NPC I'm just uncomfortable with. I don't know why. I actually don't know if that's a bad on my part or not. But anyway, I'm uncomfortable with that. So what else? They would have their, I don't know how to do it. I mean, it would have to be hair. It's going to have to be hair, lock of hair. Well, say like their braid, big braid. Do dwarven women have beards? I don't think they do. I was going to say I could do their beard, but something that would be braid of dwarvish hair. They won't be bald. They'll just be short-haired when they get there. And the weapons. And some weapons. From Clan Battlehammer. That's a prominent dwarven clan in the area. So the players will know, hey, I can go here, easily identify Clan Battlehammer stuff. They'll easily realize, well, there's no bones here. There's only hair. And if they make a history roll or, again, do some sort of questioning, like maybe they'll find a Verbig living in the area and capture them and question them. I doubt it, but just in case, it'll come out that this is a prisoner. So I'll right from the start, I'll seed a couple of good pieces of information. First one will be that they have this is a hunting ground. The second will be that there's trophies out there. This will all be the obvious part. So there's obviously this is a matter of trophy hunting and some sort of implies some sort of pride. And then there'll be a strange trophy that doesn't show any bones or death, no skin, bones, death, nothing like that. So it'll just be like this person's some weapons, and some hair, some cut off hair. And then they can do value add stuff about realizing how the Verbig do this hunting, that it can only be one person, how they might be able to navigate their way through, win some agency, and then realize there's a prisoner here that might be able to be sprung. They won't care. There's no stakes. There'll be nothing driving the player to go save this prisoner. But when they get to the cabin and they realize, oh, I was working with a dwarf from Clan Battlehammer, and they'll realize that person. Hopefully, they'll realize that person is still alive, and has some information for them. So, what's the outcome of all this? The outcome is that the player. Store, the barbarian, who does not yet have a magic weapon, this will be their magic item. What do I want out of that? Maybe that's a quick thing to touch base on. So let me pull up GM Bindery. I tend to design custom weapons for, hold on, let me go over here quickly and take this out. What did that do to my, okay. I'll put that back in a second. I just log in first. So I look at a character and I think what would be really dope for that character specifically. Now I have a bunch of stuff in GM Binder, not a lot of which I have published, but I have magic items. Yes, edit this document. It's probably not very viewable. But what I do is I have a bow for this player character. I have a Mantle of the Wild. Oh, that's all messed up. Oh, well. This format's not very good. I have a bow that I gave the ranger character that lets him cast Hunter's Mark. I have a shield that I gave to the paladin that lets him cast Thunder Wave. And what I'm looking for here is like a throwable hammer, sort of like Thor's hammer. That I don't want to do lightning. So what I'm going to do is I always want something with a special effect. So the effect of this hammer, and I'm just going to take notes of my secrets here. Onas hammer. What are his abilities? So it'll be a magic weapon. I don't know if I'll actually have a +1 on it, but throwable and returnable. That's a great ability in and of by itself. I'd love a spell on it. Now, if I do nothing else, I could add just lightning damage, like a D4 lightning damage. A D4 extra damage is just that's really easy to do. It's a little spook A's Addy. Hey, so I am about to DM my first game. Any tips? Oh yeah, gosh, wow. First of all, congratulations. My first tip is have fun. Enjoy the game. Remember, you're there to have fun too. You're just another player at the table with a different set of responsibilities. So, so let me quickly go my new DM advice. 1, have a couple good things you think would be fun to do. 2, don't feel like you have to know every rule in the book. Know basically how it works, but you don't have to know every rule in the book. You can do a couple things like just make a ruling, understand how rulings are made if you can, but make a best ruling you can in the moment. You can ask players to know, ask them to know their abilities. Ask them to read it out of the book for you. Look it up. Ask them, well, what save does that make? You don't have to know it all for them. And I would run a published module. Lost Minds of Phandelver is a great way to do that. But don't put too much pressure on yourself. Sit there, have fun, do a couple hours. If it ends early, go ahead and do that. Hey, Mew Mew V, it's great to have you. Welcome back, Mew Mew V. It's great to have you here as well. So I would say, yeah, those things. Make just have a couple good encounters in there. Don't try to control the outcome. Let the dice help surprise you. I like to be discovered. I like to be surprised as a DM. So the way that happens is I let the dice help sort of tell me how things work out. We have things we want to try to do, and the dice helps lead us there. So let that unfold the way it is. Don't try to have a specific outcome in mind. Let the players have fun. You should have fun. Don't feel like you have to know all the rules on the first game, especially those. I've been game mastering for 40 years. I still don't know all the rules. Don't be afraid to ask the players for some help in 2 ways. 1, ask them to look up a rule or know a rule, and 2, especially for new DMs, if you need a moment to think, or you need someone to look up something for you, or someone to run initiative, or someone to track something, or you just need a moment, a break, or you're getting anxious, or you're not sure what to do, tell your players that. Just say, listen, I don't know what to do here, so we're going to do this for now. I'll look it up later. Find a way to defer a question until later, and just ask the players for help. Those are my real big advices. Mimi V says, Lost Minds be like, I'm noob friendly. First encounter in the module is a deadly. It is not. I didn't think Lost Minds sucked. It might have been how you run it, but I'm sorry you felt that way. Of course, it's fine. I agree with Mimi V that out of the box, the goblin encounter can be deadly. It's not as deadly as people think, especially if you're a new DM. You're probably not knuckling down on tactics for these goblins. You just have a couple. They fire a couple of shots. The players are able to run to them. There's a self-normalizing set of behaviors with new DMs because when you're new, something might be deadly, but you don't know how to apply that deadliness. You're just having them shoot. You probably forget. Most new DMs will forget goblins get a bonus action to hide. They don't know how that works. So there's this weird balance in new DMs where they don't know how to turn up the heat on players. Now, experienced players need an experienced DM to turn up the heat, and they know how to do that. So having a group with similar skill sets is a good way to work that forward. But yeah, so anyway, I think that just have fun, ask your players for help, don't get overwhelmed. If you look at something like, if you look at that Lost Minds of Phandelver and you decide that's too deadly, drop a goblin off the encounter. Have them come in at half hit points, already wounded. Just to rebalance things. I have a couple of streams on rebalancing. It's important. You can always decide to just have them lose. Have them run. Decide that the goblins, once they lose 1 or 2 goblins, certainly the player are going to kill the goblin or 2. Just have them run. Not everybody needs to fight to the death. There are lots of levers and buttons. Levers you can pull, buttons you can press as a DM to modify the deadliness of a situation. Don't be afraid to do that. If it's too hard for your players, you can always fudge rolls. I'm going to counter that. You can do that, certainly. And if you feel the need to do that, go ahead. I don't actually think I hardly ever fudge rolls because 1, I don't think I need to. And 2, I actually think it undermines trust. Trust is a hugely important thing at the table. The players, to feel like they've earned a victory, have to trust that the DMs would challenge them, one, appropriately, but two, that they would let happen what happens by the rules. If they just feel like you gave it to them, then it becomes boring because a player can just go, well, tell me how many times I have to succeed before I win. Or they just say, well, you tell me if I've won or not. If they don't feel like they're earning it, it really reduces a sense of accomplishment. But the other things you can turn, the dials you can turn besides rolls are, you can adjust the number of hit points those monsters have. You can say that they run. You can say that they have some other motivation where they cut a deal with the party. They can capture the party. There's all kinds of things you can do that don't involve fudging a roll. All right. There's a ton of options. What if I want to lose since it's a part of the story? All encounters are designed to be beat. That's the social contract of games is. You design a counter to be beat. Now, you might design things like the players need to modify it. I have a tendency to design that this thing as a whole can't be beat. The players can't approach this as can't run through the front door, challenge all of Cragmaw Castle to a duel, and expect to win that fight. That's not a winnable encounter. So what the players have to do is they have to start thinking their way through it. Can I isolate victims? Or can I isolate combats? Can I sneak up on people? Can I sneak past people? Is there ways to control the battlefield that shift the odds to my favor? I actually think that's the core of most encounter design. Ha! Which gave me an idea for the encounter I'm trying to do, which I want to throw down. I want to throw in here. Actually, I'll just say it. I will put other Verbig there. The key is the players understanding that they can challenge this Verbig war chief to a one-on-one combat, lets them know how they can control that encounter. So that's what you want out of the adventure. Bread Ball Shoes was saying the only time I fudge rolls is if as a DM can really badly messed up with the CR. That's true. I have done that. And I agree. That's when I will usually fudge rolls. Because I've gotten into scenarios where I thought like, oh my, I have made a bad choice here. I way overshot this. And I have done that before, thankfully not too frequently. But yeah, I will say if I've done that, I've come out and told the players, listen, this is my fault. I did not design this encounter well. So here's let's do this. Let's say you're captured. Let's move to an escape scenario. I mean, I've done that. I've just flat out told people at times. Most of the time I modify it as best I can, but yeah, I do that. All right, Mew V is saying if you want to lose, then have them lose, but don't have the players die. You can do stuff like have them get captured. Yeah, that's true. Although I don't think you mean it this way, but don't make up your. I would not frequently make up your mind to have the players lose. Like have a captured scenario. That's a part of gaming. It can be fun, but you're running a risk here because one, players don't really like to be captured. It's not really something they enjoy. But two, once they're captured, they get difficult. They're going to try to push the boundaries too much. And you as a DM, if a player acts up in a prison, you're stuck with this. Well, do I make it to be this comedy of errors where the players can do whatever they want and it becomes very slapstick, or do I, if I'm running a gritty game and the guards would kill troublesome prisoners, you're kind of forced to do that or just give up the genre of game you're running. So I would say be careful with that, but you should definitely don't be afraid to run capture scenarios as the way to rescue things. Let me see. Yeah, it's definitely not DMs versus players. Mew V was talking. It is absolutely not. Antagonistic DMs is not the way to go. Dairy Dice Roller, welcome. It's great to have you. Ran Sunless Citadels on a short notice. It was a lot of reading from the adventures. I ended up dropping a ton of encounters with giant rats and describing dust. Just wasn't adding anything. That's okay. That's true. Look at the encounter. Now, if you've ever seen previous streams, you know I do this a lot. One of the first things I look at when I'm fine running over today. We got a good chat going on, so I'm fine doing that, by the way. But yeah, I look at an encounter. First things I do is what is the individual encounter, individual fighter fight like. I look at like what's the maximum damage a creature can do. If you can take out a player in a single shot, or God forbid you can kill them in a single shot outright with critical damage, I am rebalancing that fight. Something I struggle with in official module arrangements is the rooms the module seems to assume that each room is its own encounter and there's no way for the next room to know what's going on. And if you look at some of the maps, that seems silly. They're like 10 feet away. Why wouldn't they hear a fight happening in this room? But if you pile everybody into the room at once, you're going to kill the players. So, that's a hard thing to be in. So I do look at that. So the first thing I look is how much is the burst damage from an individual mob, and then I look at, well, what's the add? How do I add creatures to this fight? What triggers a cascade of failure in it? And that's usually what I end up rebalancing on. And then I do stuff like, have I overused a trope? How am I using too much of a certain type of damage? Am I spreading out opportunities for spellcasters and martial characters to do different things? Those are like tier 3, 4, and 5 maybe, but right out of the gate, it's how much damage can be done right away. Spooky was saying, I'm not going to kill them, just get captured, blah, 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 blah. By the way, we brought up Lost Minds of Phandelver. That's a fine first module, in my opinion. Some people don't like it. Dragon of Icespire Peak is another great intro module. You can do any of the one-shots you get off of the DM's Guild. There's lots of great ways. There's I suggest you look up Goblins and Growlers. Just Google them on Facebook. They have a lot of one-page adventures. They tend to be a little bit on the more anime genre stuff, but they've got great little adventures that I think you might like. All right, a lot of great. Please don't give the hard encounter. Blah blah blah. Check out the blog. Yeah. So anyway, so back to this encounter. I like that what the players will be presented with is a small compound of Verbig that they definitely want to avoid initially when they realize it. But if they're able to do some investigation, they'll realize, well, I can get around this because once I'm starting to be hunted, it's a one-on-one thing. They'll realize if I challenge the Jarl to one-on-one combat, I'll be able to defeat them and sort of let myself safely get out of the area. A few things like that. So I was designing this hammer. I want the hammer to be throwable and returnable. I want the hammer. I don't want it to have lightning. This is where I don't want to just create Thor's hammer. So what I want, I'm going to add a first level spell to it if I can. I'd love to have some kind of wind damage, like have it be a cyclone base. Like they throw it and it has this pillar of air, like a small tornado that just whips around it as it flies through the air, hits the character, maybe does some bludgeoning damage. And let me look at spells. I would love to have a first level spell equivalent that does like a small burst damage that knocks people down. So let me see. First level spell. Filter spells. What do we have? Arms of Hater is first level. Don't like that. Burning Hands. Meh. Cause Fear. Chaos Bolt. Chromatic Orb. Is there like an explosion type of spell? Like a burst of air that does some damage and knocks people down? Disguise Self-Dissonant Whispers. Earth Tremor. That's basically what I'm thinking about. I might do Earth Tremor, but it's a tremor of air. Basically create an effect. The effect is the same as this, but yes, that would be great. So this does 5 feet. Okay. Each creature must make a dex save. On a failed save, they take a d6 bludgeoning damage and are knocked prone. Ooh, that's pretty cool. In a 5-foot diameter. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to call it Earth Tremor, but I'm going to say dex save. I'll say wind. I'll put wind in parentheses. Wind. Dex save. Or 1d6 damage and knocked prone. That's pretty damn good. And I need to do that a number of times per day, though, because I don't want to make that a per round. So we'll say proficiency bonus times per day, prof bonus a day. Yeah. And that'll only be, now here's the question. Should I make that only on throne or should it be any time? I'm thinking throne because the character can knock themselves. Actually, I'm not going to do a throne because if they do it as a melee attack, they're going to take the damage and knock back as well. So I actually sort of like that. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That's going to be the hammer. I'll write this up as a magic item and put it on my blog here during the week. But I love this idea of this hammer. It has sparks around it for effect, but they throw it and it has a cyclone, this blizzard around it that flies through the air, slams into someone. It bursts with sort of wind damage at the center, does a D6 worth of damage, knocks people down, and then returns to the hand of the thrower. I think that's super cool. And then it's a nice tactical thing to like, well, I can use this as 0 range if I want, but I'm going to be knocked down by it too. I think that's super cool. So that is what I'm going to do. And you could do it a number of times per day that's equal to your proficiency bonus. I think that's a super cool weapon. What do I call it though? Hammer of the Cyclone, Hammer. If you have a suggestion, please drop it in. Hammer, what do I do? Cyclone Hammer. I don't know. I'll just call it Cyclone for now. All right. So yeah, that's what I think I'm going to do. So here, all right. So I think I've got the adventure for this upcoming session. What it is the players will start off in the woods. They're going to find out what happened to this gnome artificer that was working on a solution for the Great Winter. They'll know that that in the last couple of weeks that this Veerberg war chief has risen. And that's really all they'll know. So we start out in the woods. They come into a clearing. They see all of these sort of trophy kills around them, bones and so forth. They'll be able to tell, oh my gosh, this is the edge of a territory of a Veerberg war chieftain who's putting out their hunting trophies here. They'll be able to think, well, there's this one odd trophy here that doesn't seem to have a corpse associated with it. Then they'll be able to roll some skills and get value add information about, oh, I know what the hunting tradition is amongst the Veerberg. I know that other Veerberg can't chase me if I'm being hunted. I'll know that there's a prisoner here that could be rescued, and that's a dwarf of Clan of Battlehammer. They may not do something with that right away. They might go decide, hey, I'm going to take the threat out and then go look at the cabin. That might happen. Or they might try to sneak through to the cabin. But basically, they're going to go to the cabin. They're going to realize the dwarf was the gnome was killed by this magic item that they were creating. That it's almost done, but it needs a little bit more work on it. They need to get a hold of somebody that can help them, one, complete the work, and two, know what the mystical investment needs to be to get this to work. There's a whole bit about that they might die in the cabin, but if they fix this item, it'll bring their spirits back to life and give them something called the Boon of Lathander, which I didn't get into. It's not really that important. But so that'll either drive them to go down to the Veerberg because they'll discover it was a dwarf. They'll know it was a dwarf from the hunting grounds. If they can't put those items together, I got nothing for them. And if they know the dwarf has been captured, they go and try to rescue them. So it either turns into a hunting scenario or it turns into a rescue scenario. And get the dwarf back, go back, fix this item, and then they might choose to not engage this Veerberg at all if they sneak through. That's really up to them. But that's what gaming is about, right? You want to give them agency to make these decisions. Yeah, so I think that's it. So what am I doing here? I need to... I have a couple pathways for skills to get involved. I've got a couple pathways for lore to get involved. I've got a couple pathways for them to modify the encounter so they can make it less risky for them. I've got a couple mysteries to uncover. I think that's a good solid. It's probably going to take me 3 sessions to work through, but maybe 2. But I think that's actually really good. I think that's a good scenario. All right. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. We're about at our hour, just like normal. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this session today. Thank you so much if you've been joining me today. Thank you very much for the chat. It's great to have you here. I hope you'll follow me in future weeks. I stream every Saturday at noon Eastern. I do all kinds of D&D chat, things like that. I hope you'll check out my blog at optionalrule.com. I'm Optional Rule on Twitter, on Instagram, and all these places. I hope you'll give me a follow there. And really, I hope you engage in conversation there. We have a great crowd that has really great observations. I hope you'll lend your experience and your observations as well. And I really look forward to you joining that conversation. I hope you'll give a like, subscribe, all the social media things to this post, to any of the Twitter stuff I post. And I hope you'll share it on your own social media. It really is helpful to get the word out and see what people find valuable, to hear your feedback. I do a giveaway. It's turning out to be every Wednesday night or so of a Steam video game key. Last week I gave out, what did I give out? Endless Space? I think it was Endless Space 2. I've done a couple before that. I've got a current giveaway going for Candlekeep Mysteries, which comes out in March. Check that out on Twitter and my blog as well. You just have to like and follow and subscribe and retweet and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a great way to do it. So I hope you'll join me, like, subscribe, all those things. Great. Thank you very much for joining me this week. I really appreciate it. It's been great to have you here. We will see you again next week, and you might catch some ad hoc streams during the week. Thank you. It's great to see you all too. You all take care. You have a great week. And until next week, remember, fun is not optional. Thanks, everybody. You take care.